we have been talking about estates and land. The last two classes we went over the various what are called freehold estates, which are estates and land. A fee simple absolute, fee simple defeasible, which can either be a fee simple determinable or a fee simple subject to condition, life estates, fee tails, and term of years. Now, we're going to add another wrinkle of complexity here because these freehold estates can be present possessory interests or they can be future interests. And when I say freehold estate, that's simply to distinguish from the other main kind of estate, which is a leasehold estate, which we will talk about when we talk about landlord-tenant law. So, in terms of future interests, as we said last time, there are two kinds of future interests. There are future interests that are retained by the grantor or future interests that are given to third parties. Now, within those categories, there are different kinds of rights that can be retained by the grantor or that can be given to a third party. There is a reversion, which is the estate retained by the grantor that follows a life estate. And there's a remainder, which is an estate, a future interest given to a third party that follows a life estate. And what we're going to talk about today are the different kinds of remainders, vested and contingent. And we'll walk through each one of them. Other interests that can follow a fee simple determinable would be the possibility of a reverter if the interest is retained by the grantor, and executory interest if given instead to a third party. And a fee simple subject to condition subsequent is followed by a right of re-entry if that right is retained by the grantor, and again by an executory interest if it is given to a third party. So I've made a chart to help you sort these interests out. If the grantor conveys a fee simple absolute to the recipient, then the grantor has retained no future interest. If a grantor conveys a life estate, then the grantor has retained a reversion. If the grantor has conveyed a term of years, then again, the grantor has retained a reversion. A reversion is an interest that waits until the natural end of the preceding estate. In the case of a life estate, it's the holder of the life estate dying. In the case of a term of years, it's the term of years ending. And then, when the prior estate has reached its natural end, the reversion becomes possessory. So a reversion does not cut short a preceding estate. It waits until the natural end of the preceding estate and then becomes possessory. By contrast, if a grantor conveys a fee simple determinable or a fee simple subject to a condition, then the future interest retained by the grantor cuts off the interest of the grantee. Whether it's a possibility of reverter, which is an automatic transfer that follows a fee simple determinable, or a right of reentry, which is the option to retake the property that follows a fee simple subject to condition, either of those estates become possessory by eliminating the prior holder's interest in the land. Terminology, but if you get the words right, it will really help you sort out the options. So let's look at what happens if instead of retaining a future interest, the grantor instead conveys a future interest to a third party. If the grantor conveys a fee simple absolute, then just like before, there is no future interest. If, on the other hand, there's a life estate or a term of years is granted, then the future interest created in a third party is called a remainder. This remainder, like the version I was just describing, waits for the natural end of the prior estate, either the death of the life estate holder or the end of the term of years, and then becomes possessory. It does not cut off the prior holder's interest, but waits until the natural end of the prior holder's interest and then becomes possessory. By contrast, A fee simple determinable, or a fee simple subject to condition subsequent, is followed by an executory interest when that interest is created in a third party. It's called an executory interest because it literally executes the prior estate's holder's interest. Right? It is the possibility of a third party taking the property either automatically or through a court process upon the occurrence of the triggering event. So the executory interest in a third party has the analogous role of a possibility of reverter or a right of reentry, which is the interest that would be retained by the grantor in creating a fee simple determinable or a fee simple subject to condition. And if the grantor just creates a fee simple determinable to A, so long as alcohol is not sold on the property, and does not specify a future interest, then by law, one will be imputed. And whether it will be a possibility of reverter that is imputed or a right of reentry that is imputed will depend on the language of the grant itself. So today we're going to focus on the future interest part of this equation, whereas last class we were talking more about the language that created the fee simple determinable or the fee simple subject to condition. We're going to start, though, with the remainder that follows a life estate and a term of years. And once we've worked on understanding what a remainder is, then we'll look at executory interests.